Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. With this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, which I was fortunate enough to catch finally, and damn, just no sugarcoating whatsoever. This movie felt to me like a mythological epic come to life. It was very much the embodiment of all of my hopes and dreams for a Batman v Superman kind of movie. You know, an extension of something that has been a lifelong want, a lifelong dream. And, you know, something that, I mean, Superman and Batman, they are my two favorite superheroes of all time. Spider-Man probably coming third, but I mean, I've always largely been much more attracted to the fantasy epic side of the DC Comics universe, and they are my two favorites. I mean, you know, the selfless nature of Superman, the morals, the courage, and all these things. I mean, yes, he is uber super powerful and everything like that, but there is a very sort of, for lack of a better term, human side to Kal-El from Krypton, to Clark Kent. And that's, you know, something that is very much indicative of his upbringing. You know, you think of Jonathan and Martha Kent and how the world reacts to Superman in this film as sort of a, you know, following on from Man of Steel, all of that destruction. You have a very divisive reaction. It's kind of mirrored in the reaction to the film within the confines of the narrative, where the world is of two minds of this alien. On the one hand, he is a god, he is a savior, he is what we have long sought and needed in the history of humanity. And on the other side, he is a bastion of evil. He can wipe us out with one fell swoop. He can snap his fingers and you know, basically put us into submission, if not wipe us out entirely. As Bruce Wayne says in the film, burn it entirely down. And I like the conflict between, of course, Henry Cavill's Superman and his Clark Kent, really, in going up against Bruce Wayne and going up against the Batman and all of that stuff, how they are manipulated behind the scenes by Lex Luthor, which was a large point of speculation going into the film. You know, it just really was everything I kind of thought it would be, and I wasn't the least bit disappointed with any of it. Now, I know this film, since coming out, you know, in its second week, there was a large box office drop, and for my part, I'm kind of like, huh? What is wrong with people? This is very much, you know, whereas the Marvel films are sort of lighthearted and they are humorous and all these kinds of things, I feel very much like, you know, Batman v Superman is like the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's like something that harkens back to mythology, to see these two titans. And they are only the first of many coming to the fore throughout the course of the film, going up against each other and putting very much their ideologies as well as their fighting chops head to head in this particular film. It is something monumental. It is monumentous. You know, it feels earth-shattering, and I would have expected no less from a film that sees Superman and Batman coming together for the first time with their backgrounds, you know, the similarities that they come from in their foundations, but the very, you know, different paths that they take in their lives, one of darkness, one of light, and yet we have Batman, who is, for all intents and purposes, representative of that darkness, thinking in terms of justice, of, you know, getting back at the alien creature that could wipe us all out, and taking him out, taking this threat out. There is very much a point of doing right in what Batman believes he's doing and how he believes he's doing it, and yet Superman, who is, for all intents and purposes, that moral guidepost, that super powerful alien who just wants to help and use his powers for good, he's having a tumultuous time of it. His very human emotions and conflicts in all of the destruction wrought at the hands of his trying to save the world And this is something that also occurs in the film, as we see Lois Lane is taken captive, and we find through the grand scheme of things that this is all a manipulation on Lex Luthor's part, with the Russian guy and everything like that. Basically making it set up to be that Superman is fallible, that he has to be held accountable, and having, you know, people, movers and shakers in the government and all that politicizing, you know, taking it from that viewpoint, the media viewpoint, all of these things are very much putting under the microscope how our real world would react to a super powerful alien like Superman. And to see him not sort of the Christopher Reeve light and fluffy saving cats out of trees, even though there's a reference to that effect in the film, to see something other than that is something I have been longing for, because Superman's story, it's not just I'm an alien, I've come to Earth, I grew up on Earth, and I'm going to help. Life is not as clear-cut as that. This is something much more realistic in the portrayal of how the world might react to this kind of a creature, to this kind of a being. He looks like us, and yet many would say he is so unlike. He must be destroyed. He must be stopped. And how is that going to personally affect that person, that being, when all he's tried to do is things for the greater good? He's tried to utilize his abilities to help and to thank the world that accepted him in its embrace in the aftermath of the destruction of his home world. Of course he is going to be in conflict. It's a very natural reaction that is thoroughly explored in this film. And there are aspects of, like, Lex Luthor's moving and shaking things up, you know, basically pinioning Batman and Superman into place, that are not fully explained, but I feel are dealt with, once again, along the same lines as people having problems with Man of Steel. A lot of these things can be made through inferences if you're paying attention to what's going on. Lex Luthor has very obviously had a history with looking to the sky and thinking there is something else. We are given sort of the predisposition to believe that maybe, you know, Darkseid or Apocalypse might be shades of that. Maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something greater that we are as yet unaware, that will be made aware to us in a Justice League film. But things along the lines of his being able to figure out that Clark Kent is Superman. Well, if he's got his hands on Zod's technology, that information is already contained therein, you know. Like, Zod figured out. That's why he went after Lois Lane in Man of Steel, to dupe Superman out of hiding and say, look, sucker, we got you broad, you're going to do what we want, or else, you know. If Lex Luthor can get his hands on that kind of information, well, it stands to reason that he's going to have no problem figuring out, putting two and two together, that Clark Kent is Superman. Even though they very much do not address the whole glasses thing and why nobody can recognize him, I think it would have been very simply and easily handled if you just said it was Kryptonian tech. It was something like Doctor Who, you know, where the Doctor created a key that, you know, using the technology of his people would sort of not blind everyone else, like every person that might look at him, but would shift the focus away, would keep the focus away, so that you couldn't directly look at Clark Kent unless he wanted you to very much. And the world would look at him and just, you know, sort of see an everyman. Whereas, of course, we the viewer know he is also Superman and all these kinds of things. Henry Cavill once again delivers as Superman. He is very much the embodiment of the modern Superman, and I frickin' love his performance. I love his personage as Superman, as Clark Kent. I love that mulling over of the conflict, that internal conflict. One of the most shocking sequences in the film is when he is brought into court and that whole place goes up. That explosion, like, my heart caught in my chest. I did not expect that. I did not see it coming. Masterminded once again by Lex Luthor. Ben Affleck as Batman. Ben Affleck is Batman. You know, if Henry Cavill is Superman, Ben Affleck is Bruce Wayne, and he is Batman in this film. And he is an aged Batman. He is a scarred Batman. He's still carrying around enough fodder to create nightmares, that the internal tension again, the pathos of his character, the relatability and the depth of these characters, to see these two titans go head to head, to be so, sort of coming from the same place, but coming from different directions at the same time. It's all quite fascinating to me. And one of the turning points, the tipping points for Batman and Superman once they've gone up against each other, is calling out the name Martha. Because, of course, Martha Kent has been kidnapped and is being held ransom so that Lex can get Superman to kill Batman, or the other way around, however that's going to work out. And this cuts very close to Bruce because that's his mother's name. Like, for me, this was decades of revelation in, sort of encompassed in one moment. And of course, there are some quick cuts there where you don't actually see the engagement of the discussion, but again, making the inference that Lois, who arrives on the scene just in time, relates what they know about what Lex has done. With Bruce's already being interested in Lex, Diana, of course, Wonder Woman in the film also being interested in Lex, kind of doing her own thing. I love how she comes in, and she's not the focus, but she becomes very much a part of that holy trinity triumvirate by the end. Gal Gadot being, no pun intended, a wonder in the embodiment of this role. Everybody, I said it going in, like with the casting information, I've said it time and time again, and I'll bang on and on and on. The casting in this film was expert. Even if you find yourself not particularly caring for this particular Lex Luthor as portrayed by Jesse Eisenberg, I feel it was perfect in a lot of ways. Maybe it could have been streamlined. Maybe he could have come across a little bit more ominous and a little more serious. There is a flamboyance to his character, but the flamboyance is born of his madness. And so it makes sense to me that he is such a sort of clown. He's a clown because he is, there is a level of ingrained fear when he's around Clark Kent, Superman, when he's around Bruce Wayne, Batman. Whether he knows Bruce Wayne is Batman or not, I have to take it for granted he must have figured that out somehow in order to know to put these two together. And the way he reacts to them in that club, it's a clip that was out before the film was out, where he's like shaking Clark's hand. He's like, oh, you do not want to pick a fight with that guy, and all that kind of stuff. His flamboyance, the comedy of that is comedy born of fear. Because he knows at that very moment, he doesn't have all his tricks. He doesn't have all his gimmicks. He doesn't have his devices. He doesn't have anything to hold over their heads at that moment. He's vulnerable. But at the same time, there's an adrenaline rush. And that's exactly why he's brass tacks the next sequence. That's exactly why he's back to business in getting these two at each other. At each other's throats. And the idea of perverting Kryptonian technology, using the corpse of Zod and his own blood, the own sort of ominous nature that, that basically signifies, in his madness, in his psychosis, the creature that is born, Doomsday, for all intents and purposes, for the procedure of the film, felt very natural, made a ton of sense to me, and I cried. I actually got misty-eyed in the battle that unfolded, seeing Superman risk himself to get the kryptonite staff that Lois had, chucked away, to use that to not only enact a killing blow on Doomsday himself, but to receive one, much as that story, The Death of Superman, played out, and all that kind of stuff. And to see the little hints and whispers, Bruce Wayne having that nightmare apocalypse, sort of experience, and then being thrust into this encounter beyond time with the Flash, who then we later see, stopping a sort of convenience store robbery in the footage Gal Gadot's, Diana has uncovered through Bruce, and both of them working in tandem to uncover what Lex knows about metahumans around the world, to see Aquaman. It's like, yeah, just bring on Aquaman, bring on Justice League, the creation of Cyborg. All of this stuff man, just juiced my ever-loving psyche, just got me pumped. I mean, goosebumps upon goosebumps was this movie. It was akin to Watchmen. I've heard it compared to Watchmen, and I think there are definite similarities in the cinematography, the length of the piece, the exploration of the characters. But at the same time, it's not as quite visually vibrant. And I like, even though this is something that is of strong opposition to people who do not like these films, I like the toned down nature of the color because of the depth of the story. It gives it so much depth and atmosphere added to what's going on, what's being explored in the narrative, the characterizations, at least to my estimation. Again, this was like modern mythology come to life. It was very much putting Batman and Superman up on a pedestal. That, you know, that iconography, that ideology, and that sort of idolating of these characters, that if you're a comic book fan, you've had all your life. It was taking them and putting them up high, seeing them reign from up high, and seeing both their relatable qualities, the depths of their characters, and seeing them clash. Only, in the end, to realize they were pinioned into this. They were played. And having to come together, and having to explore a greater good, which in the death of Superman, Bruce finally understands. He has been able to move beyond those crutches of old that have held him back. And he can now maneuver to a much more sort of advantageous sense of going after criminals and seeking justice. But also the idea of uniting metahumans. The idea of the threat that a person like Lex Luthor having the awareness of these beings and being able to tag them and follow them. What that represents. We need to unify. We need to work together because there is danger on the horizon. One for all and all for one, whatever. You know, we need to be one for all. We need to work together. And we need to think of our own best interest at the same time. And for that exchange between he and Diana at the end of the film, it's like, this was the true sense of the dawn of the Justice League. And you even get that little hint, you know, of course we know, Superman survives. In one way, shape, or form. I don't know what they're going to explore in the film, if they're going to do, you know, Return of the Superman or whatever kind of scenario, or if he's just going to be back in like the black and silver healing suit kind of framework, whatever it's going to be. Whatever it's going to be, gangbusters. This film, for me, aside from like Watchmen, is the greatest comic book movie of all time. I really like, there's nothing, I can think of nothing to say negatively about this film. I got nothing. Jeremy Irons' Alfred, pitch perfect. Again, seeing Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, perfect. Seeing how humanity reacted to Superman in both of those very divisive, you know, sort of directions, pitch perfect. Seeing Batman first threatened and alarmed, maneuvered, very much was Clark Kent as well. Superman, you know, seeing these two titans maneuvered and played, being forced to pit head to head, you know, themselves. But then in the fallout, in the aftermath, realizing there's something greater. There's a greater purpose for each of them. I love this movie. I love it. It's everything I could have wanted. And so yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what your reaction to Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was. If you enjoyed it, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. But I mean, I've got nothing negative I can say about this film. It was pitch perfect for me. And if it fell less than perfect for you, if it was something you didn't like, I will gladly listen to what you have to say and respect your opinion. I might not have much to say in response to it, you know, because I just, this was a perfect film for me. I can't give it any higher praise. It's one that I fastly want to own on DVD when it comes out. I want to be able to watch this many, many times, and just, I can't wait for the future of the DC Cinematic Universe. Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, whatever we're going to be getting. I really, truly hope that Warner Brothers and the people behind this film and all that kind of stuff, they don't become disheartened, because I feel this is the right direction. I love it. That's all I can say. So, just one man's opinion, and very much that is the end of this video. That's all I really have to say on it for the time. So, yeah, again, I'd love to hear from you what you guys thought of it. Love it or hate it, anything goes. Just love having that conversation. And otherwise, it'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.